Good evening, everyone. Yang Yan Zhao back again tonight. Extra special guest. He is the artist who is the smartest. He is the designer, with whose work you cannot find any finer. And he will be with us in just a second. Just a couple quick announcements. Next week, Tuesday, which is the 9th, I have Fabrizio Aiello, who is going to come and talk to us about Horace H. Hoover. He's got a new issue out. Horace H. Hoover is a comic. He now has issue 4 out of 5. Horace is a supernatural detective who has headgear that looks suspiciously like a vacuum cleaner. Fantastic art and very interesting storyline. So come check us out next Tuesday at 9. And just a quick update on Empire of the Undying Sun for anyone who cares. Work has resumed. I have all sorts of images that are hopefully being worked on by my artists. The descriptions and everything are out, so I'm hoping by the end of December we'll have most of that done, if not the vast majority. And that's it for the announcements. So tonight we are going to talk about a new tabletop role-playing game system. It is a very interesting blend of familiar yet new, of lightweight yet robust. We will find the man who has created the perfect balance of yin and yang, and that is former art director for Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons 5e, the early one, Richard Witters.
Hello.
Wow.
I like your music. It makes me feel like I'm in the bar of a fancy hotel. Like James Bond.
That's right. You never know when a femme fatale may walk by.
Yep.
But so I've had you on a few times in the last couple years, and every time I try to needle you to get more information about Ruttigers, but you've been very tight-lipped, other than acknowledging its existence. But now we finally have a playtest version. So I guess my first question is, why and what is it that you were looking for in a game system? So for anyone who does not know, you were part of the art team for on Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, the 2014 version of 5th edition. And so you got to see a lot of inside baseball about the industry and game mechanics, and certainly you must have seen a lot of like play tests there and what worked and what didn't. How did you incorporate that into Ruttigers?
Kind of a weird thing. I think one of the things that I was looking at was like the whole reason we're doing a playtest even is to sort of confirm like have we made something that really sparks people's interest? Like have we grabbed them enough? Because to me there was sort of this bridge of like I don't want to hype something in a Kickstarter and not know if it will hit with people. Do you know?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's like I gotta give you it's like a taste tester or something, and we gotta, do you like it? Is the cake good? So that was a huge part of it. But there's another aspect too. I think there are a lot of indie games, and we were just talking about it before we came on. Some can go with very what I would call like on one end of the spectrum is like boutique design, and then the other end of the spectrum is sort of like maybe even just a reorganizing of existing, say, basic rules or something like that. So we were kind of like, well, we do have core rule stuff, sort of on a foundation that's familiar, that we kind of tweaked a bit. But what we really wanted to do was give a bunch of tools and options and interesting ways to play with those things. So when you look at the playtest, we have a lot of things like the character cauldron is a way to make a random character, but we have like the creature cauldron, which makes it really quick and easy to make monsters. So a lot of it is that it's sort of like what tools have we not seen?
Yeah.
What kind of what's kind of a different way to go at it? The setting stuff, that's one thing that we've only given a little taste of, but we're hoping to give like basically a lot of little bits of inspiration. We don't want it to be just like adventure. We want it to be like, here's ideas, here's maps, here's places, But basically it's what myself and my friends were looking for ourselves, right? Which I think is typically a good place to start, right? Like make what you would like to see, So
yeah, I think that's where most of the successful games come from. Like, you're playing some such system and you're like, well, I want a game that's more of this. And it doesn't really have that many resources for it, so at some point, I think you sort of have to break away with the version and make your own. Even I would say like TSR going over to Wizards of the Coast, you have these versions that go for so many years and you're adding on this rule and this thing. And at some point, even if everything is great, like you sort of have to condense it down and clarify it. Otherwise, like everything is all over the place. And that's one of the things that I really liked in the playtest guide is you've got more or less 20 pages. But that's really all you need, I think. You can definitely start an adventure or campaign or whatever you want to call it with that. But I will say, I have certain criticisms of 5th edition, both versions, and even older editions of D&D specifically. And I do think that the monster creation part has always sort of been weak tea. Like they have no problem giving you like a gigundous monster manual, or if anyone remembers the cursed binder from 2nd edition, the one that you would lose all your pages to.
Yep.
But like there always to me felt like there was very little resources for creating your own monsters, which would then allow you to sort of make a setting feel more personal, I think, to your players.
Yep. Yeah, that was one of the things I suspect with a lot of game companies, and you see like that they would want, if there's no quick, easy monster builder, you can sell more monster books, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's probably a tactic. I've never, having worked there, I didn't ever hear anybody say that, but I was always like, why don't we make a monster builder? For myself, it sort of came down to this, the basic idea, and I think I mentioned it in the text there, is there's a point where I realized, because I've been DMing for God knows how many years now, that the vast majority of the monsters that I would use would only last a combat.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like you're gonna get one fight out of these. So I was sort of like, well, there are monsters that are very unique, sort of, I would say, mid to high tier monsters that you're like, these are unique challenges, and we want a whole section of monsters like that. But we wanted kind of the majority of the monsters to be something you could put together pretty quickly and sort of even make your own. Let's be the thing like, oh, it's sort of Wizard Oz theme, so I want like flying monkeys that spit fire or something. So you're like, oh yeah, here's the little widgets to do that. Takes a couple of minutes. So that was one thing that we really worked on. Was can we get this system and can we have a way to adjust it pretty simply without, overburdening it? So I think we did a pretty good job. People seem to really like it. They like the utility of, I thought up an idea and 2 minutes later I have a monster. But the other big thing to it, without getting too far into the mechanical weeds, there's basically just base stat blocks that there are ways to adjust them slightly.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's special traits. And the way we set it up, there's no real point system like this trait costs 5 and this trait costs 2 or whatever. The way we set it up is actually they're either what I call kind of like net neutral, like this trait has an upside and a downside, or they're fed by the level and threat dice of the monster. So it's like they can do something threat times per day, or they can do threat damage, or they can recover threat hit points, and a threat die is just a d6.
Okay.
Yeah. So the monsters would be like, oh, this level of monster gets 3 threat die. So if it's a troll, it has regeneration. It could regenerate 3d6 per day, kind of thing. So basically that makes it like no numbers to track all the stuff. You can just like pick a stat block, tweak the stat block, throw on some traits. You have a monster. Go have fun. That's the idea.
Nice.
Yeah, but that took a lot of head scratching to figure out.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the thing, especially when you're in a world where I would say overall I really haven't seen very many systems where that's encouraged. So when you sort of have to figure out the way that it works, because of course wizards and castles and crusaders and everything, they don't give you all the secret sauce. Like for years, I've suspected they have some sort of algebraic algorithm that they keep in some kind of a vault, much like the Coca-Cola original recipe, that tells you like how exactly what the value of like a stat increase versus like a skill is and everything. So yeah, I can definitely see how if you're you sort of have to go back to basics and figure out how you want things to work. It can be a bit of a head scratcher, as you say, to figure out how things should be going.
Yeah. Like they did have sort of for 5th edition, they had sort of a sheet, like an Excel spreadsheet they used to try to calculate monster stuff. It's really tough to do with like even in that system, because I used to say, well, when my buddy Matt, who helps with when the math gets this deep, I call my friend Matt because he's a physicist. So he's like, let's get deep. Can you make sure this makes sense? No, but there are sort of effects and things in the game that I would say are quantifiable. So it'd be like, you could kind of calculate like 1 point of damage in or a d6 damage in a round is worth something, or +1 damage across so many rounds is worth something, or armor class bonus. Those are quantifiable. And then you have a whole category of like non-quantifiable, right? Like disguise, right? Like it's like, how many points is that worth arbitrarily? So you have to kind of gauge them,
So how did you come up with that? Because like, just for example, looking at magics, in the Lord of the Rings, Gandalf kind of sort of throws a fireball at one point, in the Battle of Minas Tirith. But there's no real numbers, there's no real stats, but it seems like, if you're playing a game, you sort of have to quantify that, which sort of reduces the mystery and the wonder of it. So what's the right mixture for you as to like, well, we got to quantify some, but how do you still keep that exciting?
Yeah, well, like I said, with the monsters and having some of their abilities fueled by the threat die, that gives a little bit of that, variability, where it's like, are they able to, like, they have a trait. Let's say they could teleport. With threat die, I'll just say D6. They have 3d6, and they can teleport d6 times, I don't know, 30 feet or something. So you kind of know, okay, they get 3 of those. They can teleport probably about 90 feet each time they use one, but they may be able to teleport further, or they may be able to teleport less. So adding in a bit of that variance, so it won't go, average is here. It might go a little lower or a little higher, but it is controlled, but it does have excitement when you roll high, right? Yeah. And we did that with the spell system as well. We have like the wild casting and control casting. Now we started with just the wild casting, but it's basically like you were saying with a fireball. A fireball scales to your roll. So you make a spell casting roll, and let's say I roll, it depends on your level, because it's D20 plus your mod plus your level. So D20 plus intelligence plus level for a mage. Let's say I rolled like a 17. That might give me like, I forget what it is now, like 3 ranks or something, 3 or 4 ranks. If I manage to roll higher than that, if you go up to the character sheet, actually, it should show the ranks.
That's where it was. I knew I was looking at that earlier. There you go.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, so if I rolled a 17, that's 4 ranks, right? Now, low level, my average, with a bonus is maybe like 13 or something, so it's like 2 or 3 ranks maybe. Okay. But as I go up in level, I could, if I rolled really good, I could maybe get a fireball, up to 5 ranks when I'm low level. But on average, it's going to be kind of in between. So it gives a little bit of that excitement of sometimes my spell might kind of not go as well, and sometimes it'll just go off. So to us, that was sort of the variant, was a way to add excitement.
I like that. In my campaign guide, I sort of added something to give spells a little more variety, and I see you kept the cantrip from which is somewhat controversial in quarters. But one of my things is if you roll like a nat 1 when you're using a cantrip, you forget it for the rest of the day because you're so frazzled in combat. And then the next day, then it comes back. But I did have a question about the wild castings when I was reading over it, and that is, so you can basically increase the rank, increase the power based on your role. But what if you didn't want it to be that powerful?
That gets into a few things. Like we didn't write an explicit rule about it. But I would say if someone was thinking about that, they probably have a similar rule of what if you want your attack roll to not be so powerful, Okay. So typically it's like the 99% assumption is if I'm in a fight or something that I want it, and I'm casting a spell, I want it to do as good as possible.
Yeah, of course.
For myself, like just as general DMing, I'd be like, if someone wanted to dial it down, I would say they could. They can't dial it up. But we are, so it's like, which might be something worth putting in. Just sort of like if you want to basically pull a punch on a spell. I would say that would be totally fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because, usually you can like with a melee character, you can say, I'm going to hit him with the flat of my sword just to knock him out instead of kill him. I usually tell magic users like, well, you're using magic, so you get what you get. But, like in a system like 5e, you do have some sort of control, like if you're going to upcast it or not. And I was just wondering how that worked here. Oh, that's interesting.
That's in the, like, we have a section where we're going to put ancillary rules. And I have some rules for what did they call that in combat? Subdual damage. That's what you used to call it back in the day. So I think that would be a good little widget to put in. which is like if you cast a spell at a certain level, you can always pull it back. We have a rule that we put in the playtest that we called spell burn, which is like if you're out of spells, you can make a casting roll and cast a spell anyway, but the result of the spell roll, the casting roll, is the damage you take. So that can be pretty nasty.
Yeah.
But people loved that. They were like, this feels like I don't know, sword and sorcery touch, where a caster just goes, whoa, and like, you know. So we have a slight variant on that we want to put in as well, which is a little more choosing your burn, which could be fun. So we're all about little variant rules where you could tweak the game or tweak little aspects. So we really like that. So it's sort of like the core rules are nice and clear, and then we have like options and variants and additions that you can add.
Very nice. I know this is going to sound like super nitpicky, and it's been something I've been wondering about game design in general. When you're going to make these widgets, are you going to go through and explain like sort of the ramifications of the choices?
Yeah.
And what okay, interesting.
Yeah. Like even a simple one, for example, I remember I was talking to was it Dean and Vicky from Untold Destiny on their channel. And I was talking to my friend Matt about it the other night. Like, I would say, here's a really simple example. You have our encumbrance system right now is very simple. We're tightening it up a little bit. But the ramifications, to me, there's debates about, do you use encumbrance? Don't bother, blah, 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 right? So to me, I just look at it as, like I think of the old first edition DMG. There's a ton of stuff in there. We didn't use all of it all the time. But when you did want something, it was there, right?
Yeah.
So say for encumbrance, if your characters are all in a city running around and all that stuff, they probably aren't worried about resource management. Like do I have rations? Do I have enough arrows? Right? So you're and their equipment might even be at the tavern where they rented a room, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
So you're sort of like, okay, in that situation, you're probably not too worried about encumbrance. Now, if you're doing a dungeon crawl or you're crossing a desert, encumbrance is hooked into resource management. Like, do I have enough water? How much water can I carry? How much? So those are the kind of things we would explain, like the use, the way you leverage encumbrance in a game. It's sort of for this. So there's a lot of things like that where we sort of go, here's sort of the ramifications. We want to keep it succinct, right? We don't want to necessarily go into the theory of all the, but just sort of say, hey, if you use this in your game, it's probably about resource management. You're adding tension, this way. So yeah.
I like that. That's one thing that I think is really overlooked. If there's one thing I can say for sure that we can do better now than Gary Gygax could in 1974 is because we've had 50 years of playtest for games with different styles. We will use this rule. We won't use this. Let's add this other rule. We can really go back and say what will happen. So as far as the user experience, if the DM says, well, I want, so encumbrance is actually a great one, I think, because, if you don't have encumbrance when you're doing dungeon crawls, you don't need to bring hirelings because you just carry all the treasure yourself. If you don't have hirelings, and you can carry all the coins in your pockets, then you don't need a fortress or some sort of home base to keep it in. So then you don't have domain play, all from not using encumbrance. And I think, if, especially for a lot of modern, I hate to say modern audience, but basically people who weren't around 50 years ago and they never played that way, I think if you explain to them like, hey, if you use this rule, this is what happens. If you don't use a rule, this other thing happens. And, whichever game you want to play is just fine, but be aware, you have the option to use this rule or not. And I think that more modern game design should really specify, hey, we kind of designed it this way because we're going for such and such an effect. But if you don't want that, here's what will happen to your stories.
Yep. And I think that's where you get into, like, in thinking about game design stuff, that brings a couple things to my mind. Like, I'm a big fan of Fritz Lieber and Pfeffer and the Grey Mouser, right? Now, if I read those stories, typically they aren't too worried about encumbrance or this or that. They're sort of just running around and doing stuff and all that. Now, then when you look at it, now if you research, let's say, medieval times and how much, weapons might weigh and coinage and stuff like that, then you're like, okay, so one of those is sort of narrative modeling, right?
Yeah.
And the other one is sort of, I guess, historical or what somebody might call like accurate modeling. And I'm sort of like fine with both of those, but it's more about can we give you the tools to do what you want to do at the table? Because sometimes you might even really like, a lot of the rules. I like a lot of the rules, like encumbrance and stuff. But if I have an evening and let's say it's Christmas and a bunch of buddies are in town and we don't get together very often, don't worry about encumbrance. Don't worry about that. Let's just have a crazy adventure. Then it's like, those should just be tools that you can, turn off and on. I guess that's how I kind of see it. And also crafting it, like basically if you want to use apply a few widgets that maybe takes your game from Skyrim to Dark Souls, then we should just tell you, right? Like death at 0, right? Like death at 0 HP. Here's that kind of thing.
And that was another question. So for anyone who's into it, there of course is a massive online debate. Is it death at 0? Is it death at minus something or another? Do you get death saving throws? How did you come to your choice? Which I thought was quite a nice way to sort of like split the baby,
Yeah, so when we played, like, when I ran a lot, when I first started running games, it was D&D first edition. And I don't even know if the rule was in the book or where we got the rule, but we used to have that if your character's hit points dropped below 0, you lost 1 hit point per round from bleeding. And if you reached -10, you were dead, right? Now we played with that rule for a long time, but the truth is, you might get knocked to like -3 hit points. So you have 7 rounds. That's plenty. The battle will be over before you would bleed to death, right? So it's so a lot of times didn't play, and to me it's like, if you play that, if you want to play that, great. What we did is, instead of 1 hit point per round that you lose, it's a D4. So now you can take that situation, you're at -3. In 2 rounds, you could be dead, right? Or, like say you rolled a 4 and a 4, it's like you're done, right? Like, or if you're at -6, it could be a round, right? So I was trying to split the difference a bit there. But like I said, we'll have in the ancillary rules sort of like, death at 0 hit points. And it's like, this will make your game, like this will basically up the risk. Players will probably avoid combat more, or they might retreat more. Right. And then maybe some other ways to do it. But I think generally we like, to me that changes the game. So that should just be at your fingertips to be like, let's play a hardcore game, right? Like, I
don't know if you know the Dungeon Minister. He does a show once a month with myself and the Dungeon Delver, And so he was telling me one time he runs Beckme with his kids. And then his kids started going to like a local game store, and they were doing like fifth edition game there. So he's like, okay, well, while they're doing that, I'll run a Beckme here. And so he had some people who were used to playing fifth, and then they said like, oh, let's try this. And he said, but he also had some old timers who had played, back in the basic days, and he made an observation that it was night and day how the players reacted, because all the fifth edition people, they were like, oh, there's a door, I'll open it and burst on through, not knowing what's on the other side. Whereas like the old timers were like, no, we got to listen, peep through that keyhole. So yeah, the game 100% gets changed immediately, just with a few small rule changes.
Yep. And it's such a, and I think it's something for me early on as a DM, I had to kind of play with that and feel it out. There's an aspect to that where, I give you the example I used to use. You listen at a door. I forget what they called the monster. It was like an earworm would go into your ear. And it's like, oh, so you should use like an ear horn to listen at a door. But then it's like, okay, you listen at the door. Okay, then you grab the doorknob. Oh, you got shocked. And then, oh, God damn it. But you get in the room, and then you step in the room. The floor is a monster. Oh, shit, you fight it. Oh, the ceiling is also a monster. So you should have poked it with a 10-foot pole. So I realized there are things like that, too. There were so many monsters like that in original D&D. If you DM'd it, if you DM'd too much of that, the players would be so paranoid that the game would move in inches, right? Like it would be like, test everything. Don't talk to that person yet. Don't.
Yeah.
So it was sort of a balance. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of occurs with players naturally. When my first test group, when I was testing my game, I never once booby-trapped a door. And they would spend like 20, 30 minutes trying to figure out how to open a door safely, just to have me say like, it's been unlocked the whole time. You just had to turn the knob.
Yes. Yep. Oh, I had one where it was just the lever, right?
Yeah.
It's like going to, like, it was just a round room with a lever in the middle. And I used it in a few different games over the years. Sometimes I just throw it in. And the first thing that happens is people are just like, don't pull the lever. But there's like this magnetic pull. It's like the pull of the sun. Like they will not leave that lever unpulled. So then stage 2 is they'll figure out some elaborate thing. Because I remember once they were like, we'll tie a rope to the lever and then we'll string it outside of the room and we'll pull the lever from out here in the hallway. Or I can use the grasping hand spell to pull the lever and we'll all be out here and all that. So, and this was the silly lever thing that I would do. They would always end up pulling the lever and then they'd say, what happens? I'm like, you're not sure? They'd be like, did it trigger something else? I was like, maybe. Like you'll find out.
Yeah,
and sometimes I give them, sometimes I give them a little cutscene of like somewhere in the dungeon a portcullis goes, and there's these two red eyes, and it goes, something's in there, and it steps out. Anyway, you guys are back in the, but for those tricks and traps and things, like I used to like throw them in every once in a while. But like you were saying, the big part in between is more like a poker game, right? You don't need them all the time. But if you're kind of playing poker with the players, like, do you want to do that? You think that's a good idea? It can be fun. Yeah. But that's hard to like, here's the part. Yeah.
So, I guess one of my other questions was, I think that it's here somewhere. The class. here
Oh yeah,
somewhere.
classes
Okay,
is just above the spells.
there we go.
Class
No,
advancement.
it's
Yeah.
advancement. Yeah. Um, so I like that. You kind of break it down into simple classes: fighter, rogue, caster.
Mhm.
So for me, one of the sins of fifth edition, and I think Chris Perkins, I think I saw him agree with me on a video. Not that he knew who I was or anything, but that for fifth edition there were too many classes, and there was too much overlap between the classes. Whereas it's better to have very clear distinctions as to what kind of class you're playing, what kind of role you're playing, and then have various subclasses under that. So I am kind of curious. Technically, there were 3 classic classes, but then they added the rogue. So what made you stick with the 4 as opposed to I don't know. You could pull out more classes that would make them play differently, but why the 4?
Well, or you mean fighter, rogue, caster? Like
Yeah,
those
yeah,
3?
yeah.
Yep. Um, uh, Basically for me, I guess in my head it always goes back to first edition. Like you could play a fighter, you could play a paladin, which was like kind of a subclass of fighter. You could play a
Mhm.
ranger, which is also a subclass of fighter.
Mhm.
You could play a magic user, you could play an illusionist, which was a subclass of magic user, right?
Mhm.
So to me, it was always sort of there's a couple parts to that. Game design wise, it's like you want some way to organize it. So a player is like, I want my character to be fighty, right?
Yeah.
Because they're major buckets. Like is my character kind of a kick-ass fighter character? Are they sort of more of a stealthy, clever character, or are they somebody who wields magic, or are they some mix? So to me, it's like interface wise, let's say, let's put them in buckets. But even if you have, let's say your system really only has like fighter, magic user, thief, cleric,
Mhm.
for example, which I think is what Shatterdeck maybe has, right? So
I think so.
then you want a little bit of like, yeah, but what makes my fighter different from your fighter,
Yeah.
right? And that was one of the things I love. Like one of my favorites is Moldvay Basic D&D.
Mhm.
Um, but you did kind of have a lot of that. So you brought the personality to yourself of like, this is my character, this is why he's cool. But if you're playing a fighter, generally you're pretty close to anybody else who's playing a fighter. So that was sort of the thing here, where it's like we want those big buckets so it's easy to navigate, but then you want to say what thing can my fighter do that's a little different from how your fighter does it. And also a lot of these come from just shit my friends asked me for over the years, right? like the
Yeah.
brawler is straight up. There was a friend of mine who's like, I always wished you could play like a viable punchy guy, right?
Yes.
So like that's on my list because of him, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's another question for that I kind of wanted to get into too. Is I was in the audience on Jack's show the other night, and they were talking about martial arts in tabletop role playing games, and generally, it totally sucks. Um, I think fifth edition did okay, uh, because you punch someone or you hit them with a mace. Realistically, it's just a flavor difference. You don't need a difference in mechanics. But I was wondering, will you have any sort of advanced grappling or those kind of rules? Because to me it seems like a brawler, someone in a tavern, they know how to like grab a guy by the waist and slam him to the ground.
Yeah, and there's a few things in the well, actually in the playtest now or whatever, we have like a maneuver system.
Mhm. Oh, nice.
Um, it's basically sort of like it is essentially roll a skill check,
Mhm.
and if you succeed, you get a d6 that you can either add to your own. I think it's attack and damage roll in this version, so you could use it to add to your attack or damage. You could give it to a friend, so they could add it to attack and damage, or you could throw it as a penalty onto an enemy. So what we're trying to do there was sort of model it of like uh, a fighter probably has, like, let's say a fighter enters melee combat. If they're in melee combat, in our system, you have an attack and a move action. So there are
Mhm.
two things. So if you're in melee combat, you always have this move action that's sort of not being used. So it was like, let's make sort of a maneuver for that, whereas a caster might use it to cast a cantrip, a rogue might use it to try some other type of maneuver.
Mhm.
Well, let's give the rogue and the fighter this kind of maneuverability thing that they can use in combat, and you sort of map it to be like, I'm trying to trip him. It's like, okay, let's probably give him, the enemy, a penalty. So make a roll and see what you get. So I think we have a few different ideas for that. Um, I think people generally liked the way we had maneuvers in this playtest. But also, we found from some of the playtest feedback, people kind of often forgot it. So
Yeah.
we're working on a couple of other variants that we want to test out and see what people like. But like you're saying, we also want the combat to feel like our break 20 thing. Our break 20 sort of critical. People really like that because it added this little touch to combat. So we wanted some way to just kind of say, yeah, I want to grapple him or push him or try
Yeah.
to find a weak spot, right? But we're looking for like a systematic approach, sort of like a skill check.
Mhm.
So we don't have to define every instance of what you can do, and more
Yeah.
say, here's a system that allows you to do various things. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I do find that once people get it, they really like it. Like in my campaign guide, I have modified rules for 5e at least for
Hmm.
restraining and grappling, and then there's also a talent tree system where you can sort of level up in unarmed combat. And one of the guys realized, like, oh, so he always had this dream of being a luchador wrestler in
Okay.
D&D, and with those rule changes, he's like, oh my god, I could do this. I can absolutely like tombstone a goblin and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, yes, you
Yeah.
could. I think that's good. And I know this is really getting into the weeds, but one thing I did like about Draw Steel, which is
Hmm.
the new Matt Colville one, is they have kind of like a barbarian class. They call it Fury. And the one thing I thought was cool is you are able to throw an enemy into an object or another enemy, causing them more damage. Or like, if you throw them into another guy, they both take some damage. Do you think something like that would be possible? And also, I could see something like that being more popular if there were a
Hmm.
way to do it.
Yeah, we had sort of like, there's two that we're kind of working on. We'll probably put them both in the next playtest so people can try them out. But one of them is more of the basically a maneuver would be similar to that wild spellcasting ranks, right?
Mhm.
So you'd kind of be like, I'm going to try a maneuver. I'm going to roll a d20 plus whatever attribute modifier. And the higher I roll, the better I'll be at it. Or I might actually roll bad and, get fail it or get a penalty to something. But in general, it's sort of like you probably get like a number, let's say 2.
Mhm.
So that means you could take a +2 to attack. You could give a friend a +2 to attack, or you could give an enemy a -2 to attack. So you're like, that's how good your maneuver was. So we were kind of like, okay, that's a very simple system. But then there's the other system, and I made this sort of for my buddy Pat, and we haven't tested it yet. But it is more of a I guess it's like ante in poker.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah, yeah.
So a player will start with here's what I want to do. I want to throw a rock at that crumbling archway and
Mhm.
have some of the rocks fall on the monster. And you're like, okay, so there's no way that we can make we don't want to make rules that address
That
individual
specific
things
thing, yeah.
like that, because we would be writing a book of rules
Yeah.
and then you would have to never find anything. So it was like, okay, so now we go into kind of negotiation. It's like, okay, if you manage to pull this off, well, first of all, am I going to get you to make an attack roll or a skill check or what? That's the first part. So it's like, okay, you're throwing it, so we'll call it an attack roll. And you're like, okay, if it works, you're going to do X damage to the monster. If you roll really well, you're going to do XX damage to the monster, right?
Mhm.
If you fail, something's going to happen to you, right? And
Yeah.
if you roll a natural 1, that thing that happens to you might be real bad. So it's sort of like a little guidelines on here's
Yeah.
how you negotiate the roll, and then you say, is that fair? Really bad for you, kind of bad for you, good for you, really good for you. Now we're going to roll the dice. Everybody agree? Let's do it. So it's sort of a kind of a bargaining system, but it always has like a what's the upside, what's the downside. So the roll needs a downside, so it has tension, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's sort of a system like that. And either one, whether you screw it up or make it, it'll create a good story, right?
Yes. Yes.
We tried to do this. So that's sort of a loosey-goosey kind of system. But I scratched my head on that honestly for a year, like trying to think of like how can I do it so it's not explicit, but gives people the tools to deal with Pat, who my friend Pat, who's always like, I'm gonna try to do this, I'm gonna try to do that. So I was like, what I always do is sort of negotiate the rules, right? It's like
Mhm.
it's all gonna depend on this roll. If you roll really good, that'll work out. If you roll really bad, I'm gonna punish you. So I was like, that's probably the best I can come up with for that. Yeah.
So going from the specifics like that back to like a 30,000-foot overview,
Yep.
a lot of the new games like Draw Steel or Daggerheart,
Mhm.
they seem to really aim for short campaigns. I don't know about Daggerheart, but Draw Steel only has 10 levels, and then it's done. Um, how is Ruttigers structured? Is it structured more like that, where you're expecting a campaign to be relatively short, or is it more like the original, where we still have people playing basic? And I think our buddy the Dungeon Delver has been running a Monday night game for 20 years. Is it more like that, or is it more like sort of for lack of a better term, trend that seems to be shorter campaigns?
We have oh, and I can see on screen there too, there's like a artifact type of thing.
Oh,
On the Blackguard. We have it right now, it goes up to 10th level.
okay.
But we want to the basic idea is, and we've had this since the beginning too, we want to go beyond 10th level.
Okay.
Ideally, you just keep playing your character. But we want 3 aspects of the math to cap at 10th level, so
All right.
that your character doesn't just keep going. So the first aspect is your attack bonus caps off at wherever you're at. So you can't just you can still get quite high attack bonus as you go up. But if you get into like plus 20 to hit, plus 30 to hit, like I think 4th edition went up quite high with attack bonuses when you got high level.
Yeah.
It sort of breaks the system. It sort of throws the system off. The other one is we'll probably cap hit points at 10th level.
Mhm.
Just so you never feel like it curbs a bit of the I can jump off a 100-foot cliff and get up. Right?
Yeah.
And then the other one, which is pretty necessary, saving throws cap at a certain level. So at 10th level, you'll have a very, very good saving throw, no doubt. But we also have some of the named monsters that you'll face at that level have things that you really do not want to fail a save against, like save or die, right?
Yeah.
Things like that. So it's like, oh, you only have 5-10% chance of failure, but if you do, it's death, right?
Yeah.
So those three things, which is attack bonus, hit points, saving throw, we're going to cap. But then, as you can see how the system's built, there's sort of abilities and things you can keep adding to your character. You can keep adding things to them, and we were adding some things that we called embraces and other things that you can do. Like maybe you want to keep gaining levels but slowly become a lich, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you want to work your way to being a Valkyrie, right? Like something like that. So I think it gets into that. In my mind, it feels like the old Beck Me or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want it to be a cutoff. We want it to be like a threshold, and the game probably changes a bit. And also, we cap certain rules a bit so that it doesn't break it, because we would like to have you have a long campaign, and we don't want it to get silly.
Okay, yeah, because and I had a question about that. A lot of people complain about, for over 10 years about 5e and higher level play. And to me, one of the problems with 5e was they seems like they really got rid of the domain play, and having fortresses and you're sort of a lord or the head of the bandits or whatever. And like that's where the higher level play got interesting to me, because otherwise it's just like you're just kind of doing the same thing but with higher pools of hit points. So I'm curious to say, like, is that sort of the direction you want to go into, or is it more like how let's say like a paladin and a bard, they were like special heroic classes? Is that something people will graduate into, or have you guys quite got that far yet?
It's so okay, I'll try not to go too far down the rabbit hole. But we were looking at it. We were looking at a thing. One of the things we were looking at was, and working out was the actual economy, right? So it's like, what makes 10,000 gold a lot, and it's only a lot if there's if it's hard to get 10,000 gold, or you have some system for like a first level person can't just get 10,000 gold, or it's unlikely, right? So we were working on that kind of thing. We had this with the new experience system. We'll have we've worked out a little system. It's almost like the inverse of gold for XP. It's almost like you earn XP, but you're part of the Ruttigers Guild, so you almost have like a writ of mark or like a writ of credit. So you can go to a guild and be like, I'm a journeyman Ruttiger. I need 500 coin, and they'd be like, here you go, right? So we're kind of like, okay, so that controls the base of the economy. Plus, you have your treasure and spoils on top of that, which is what your players get, but you can kind of measure that out. So, as I was saying, it's a bit of a rabbit hole because everything we're doing seems to be like it's simple to play. It has not been simple to design. So we have these other rules that we didn't release in the playtest yet, but there's what we call the skirmish rules, where you can spend your coin to hire not just hirelings, we'll have that too, but armies, right? Nice. So it's like you kind of have armies, crews of ships, stuff like that. So you get skirmish rules for that, and then this is all kind of one subsystem that we worked in together. So you get kind of skirmish rules for small units up to fairly good sized armies. Then you get sort of like structures, like can you build or siege a castle,
Yeah.
things like that. Then you get ships and ship combat. And I've had some people request flying ships. It's like, okay, we'll put that in there too as an option. And then you have what we call behemoths, which are like creatures so big that they could attack a ship, a castle, an army, right? So basically, this sort of overarching multi-part system is sort of for that type of play, and then your basically writ of credit, or allows you to say, I'm going to hire an army. I'm gonna buy a ship. We're all gonna chip in and buy a ship, things like that. So yeah, and myself personally, I've always liked that stuff.
Yeah.
And there's sort of a fine line. Everything we're doing, we try to keep it like it's real simple. So we're not. So it's not going to be. We'll have skirmish rules and this and that, like I just explained. It's not going to be a full war game. We aren't trying to squeeze Warhammer 40K into our game. So we're kind of like this. We want this, like the Creature Cauldron, to be easy and quick and allow you to put it in your game without having to learn a whole new game, right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
pretty easy to pick up. Yep. So.
Very interesting.
Again, if that explains it, that's like a big.
No, I mean that makes sense to me, and I like how that kind of keeps the cycle going too, because one thing I always thought was interesting is once you're at that like high level play, it's easy to add in other things like Bronsteining or Steining or however you want to say it, and things like that, where it's like, yeah, you have people playing at those high levels, but then you could say like, okay, well, it's going to take you like a month or something. And, you need to send some people over to this other place. So why don't you all roll up new low level characters, and then you have like a low level adventure that takes place while your big guys are doing all the prep work and stuff. And to me, it just feels like it makes, I don't know, like it just makes the world feel more full. Like the one thing I really detest in most tabletop role-playing games is like the world feels incredibly static until your party happens along that area. Like there's like nothing ever changes, nothing's going on. Like I like it like, the royal family's engaged and like this junior member is trying to kill that guy to be next in line for the throne, and like all this stuff is happening in the background, and maybe you hear whispers of it when you're at a lower level, but as you level up, like you're kind of there.
Yeah, I used to, when I was at Wizards, I used to talk to people about that, and I used to call it theaters of war, right?
Yeah.
It'd be like, how do you think of a game? It's like, well, what the characters typically deal with is, let's call it local, right? Like it's localized to them. The next sort of theater of war, or whatever you want to call it, stage, whatever, would say what's generally happening in the city they're in. Say, if it's a big city, there's going to be guilds and this and that and smuggling and all this other stuff going on. And then you get, what's happening in the world. Are there conflicts between countries? Is there something happening in Mordor? Right?
Like, yeah, exactly.
That kind of stuff. And then in some games, you can actually get to like extra planar, right? Like, are there things from other planes that are intruding, or do you go to other planes? So I used to think of it kind of that way, but we kind of, I think, for me, it's like looking at the pulp fantasy stories and things like that and saying, if I can read this in a Conan book or comic or novel, if I can Fafnir the Grey Master can do this, how can we do this in the game without making it so complicated that you have to kind of like study beforehand, but complicated enough so that it simulates a little bit, right? So, and then the secondary one is, for us anyway, is sort of like secondary one is it realistic enough, right? because I could make a little skirmish combat game, and we made a few. I've made a few different ones, and it was like, this is really quick and easy, but it doesn't feel like two armies fighting. It just feels like random dice rolls and stuff. So yeah, but I usually start with what can they do in the stories, because everyone wants to run around and live out those stories.
Yeah.
And then you go, okay, what's the realism, and then what's the mechanics?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that's the goal of a lot of the games, and that's what Gary and Fred were ultimately trying to do back in the beginning. Is like, how do we make these cool stories into something playable? So I had a question. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, just on that too, because this is another thing I've heard people talk about, and of course I get an opinion on it. But sort of like, and sometimes I'm not even sure exactly what the definitions might be, but say like story gamer versus non-story gamer, or this or that kind of thing. And to me, it's sort of like, when I hear people that have distaste for story gaming or something, I think what they might be referring to is drama, right? Where it's like, it's a lot about interpersonal relationships, and it's like dramatic acting. But there's a lot of story stuff, like action adventure is a type of story, right? Survival horror is a type of story. So to me, that's like, again, that to me is a thing you kind of dissect. If it's a very dramatic story between characters, that almost can be like improv role play, and you might not need a combat system at all. But if you have a survival horror, there's a lot of rules that you can use to make that feel right. If it's an action adventure, there's a lot of rules you can. So that to me is the thing. To me, the heart of the fantasy tabletop games, and for us pulp stuff, is action adventure.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that too, because I'm working on a video. Hopefully next month I'll get back to releasing regular videos about like know your genre and like why your games don't feel like they're working. It's because each genre has its own rules, and if you're not obeying those rules, it does. That's one reason why everything turns into Scooby-Doo at the end. And the story gamer and people not liking that, I think that is a reaction to sort of the Dragonlance style playing. A lot of people will talk about on rails or sandbox. To me, the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle. Like having an open world where your players are free to do what they want in it is fine. But, in our world, theoretically we are, but there are things that you may not do, or there will be consequences. And I don't have a problem with giving players consequences for things. And the other thing is, there's always the carrot and the stick, and people forget the carrot. Like I have in my campaign guide, at one point there's a tournament, and they're offering more money than the players have ever seen in their lives. And some guy is going to pay them regardless of if they win or not. And if they win, they get to keep the money. Like, of course they're going to go do that tournament. It sounds awesome. So I think that having awesome adventures is not having it on rails. The players are like, yeah, that sounds great. I want to do that. So both extremes seem a little extreme to me.
I mean, there's this interesting, and maybe it's because it was the genesis of tabletop games or whatever, but there's a cool part with D&D, right? Like I was saying to you, Skyrim to me feels very different from Dark Souls. Dark Souls is very like punishing and stuff. But if I went back to when we played D&D, early on when I was playing, it was very like dungeon crawl, right? Like we were going to have a story a bit, and then we would find a dungeon or a place to go through, and we'd map it and do all that. There were friends of ours, I remember at the time, we'd be like, oh, those guys, they have a Monty Hall game, right? And they would be like, we're fighting gods, and you're saying the joke would be like, yeah, my character has 2 Mjolnirs. And it's like, how'd you get 2 Mjolnirs? And it's like, well, we killed 2 Thors. Right? And then took their, oh, okay, that's a Monty Hall game, right? And I remember at the time we'd kind of be like, Monty Hall game, but over the years, I've played some. They're fun. They're super fun, right? Yep. I don't think I would do a long Monty Hall campaign, but it's super fun to roll up like a high level character and go fight Zeus or something.
Yeah.
And then there's other styles like Tomb of Horrors. I would say is sort of a meat grinder if you don't keep your wits about you, right? So that again is another style. That's, you aren't playing a long campaign of Tomb of Horrors, right? Like you're either going to survive or not, right?
I've played in campaigns like that.
Yeah. So to me, that was the interesting part of the rules. Most games, like let's say video games, digital games, give one experience. Like Dark Souls is unforgiving, but tabletop games have this ability where you can set the dials and say, I want this game to feel more gritty and dangerous. I want this game to be more just fun and crazy. And this one will be like a Monty Hall. We're just going to have fun and go over the top. So I like that, actually. There's a bit of what I used to call, or what I've called before, like hot rodding, where you can say, my game, this campaign is going to be like this. And you can't do that with other games as easily.
So Patty asks, is a Monty Hall campaign dependent on a random table, or is it more of a let's power level characters and then war game the toughest monsters?
That's me would be, so this goes back into the prehistoric age, right? Mm-hmm. So I often find this when I'm talking about like back in the 80s or something like that. I can tell you what we usually did, but there weren't there were bulletin boards maybe or something, but there weren't online forums where people decided these are the rules of how you do this. So I can tell you what we would do, or what we saw as Monty Hall campaigns or stuff back in the day, which would be, you probably made a character that was 15th or 20th level, and just kind of gave them pick of magic items, and then you would go pick a fight with Odin, right? Or all the monsters, like let's go try to kill a Tarask, or like all the monsters that you couldn't fight as until you worked up to like a really high level. It's like, just make a high level character, load them out with all the shit you want. A lot of times too, we would randomly roll stuff, but a lot of times too, it'd be like you can pick 3 items, whatever you want. It's like, oh, okay, mm-hmm. I'll take a +5 defender in the Eye of Vecna, and right, something like that. Yep. So that's how we or folks we knew back then used to do it. Yeah.
And speaking of fighting the gods, mm-hmm. So checking out this illustration here, I think most people are familiar with D&D's Wheel of Eternity or whatever they call it, with all the different planes and whatnot. I really like the idea of this as a representation of all the different spiritual as well as physical realms and whatnot. But I guess my question is, what role will those play in Ruttigers, and same with gods? God, I mean, I saw that there were some demons, beasts from the abyss, in the brief monsters that were in there. But how will they be incorporated into your system? Because for all the versions of D&D have always seemed very schizophrenic to me about how they run spiritual matters, basically.
Yeah, we kind of, to me, it's sort of on that again is kind of on tiers. So in this section where you have like when we have the actual gazetteer, there's like mm-hmm. the planar part. So let's say hell, for example, or the abyss. You'll have demons and things like that kind of rank from like little imps up to pit fiend, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of those will probably be pretty basic stat blocks, pretty things, and you could, and then you could use the cauldron to even customize and make your own pretty easy. Those are kind of like, you know, lower tier, but
Mhm.
they still can be pretty powerful. You could have a 15 hit die creature that's still in that bracket. Then you get what I would call sort of a named monster. So that's where you're talking about something the equivalent to like Orcus or Demogorgon or something like that. Those will have probably not only just they'll have their own custom stat blocks, but they'll have like minions and like a lair and things like that. So, because I always like that idea of like, if I'm going to go fight Orcus, is he in this Temple of Undeath, and what other minions are there that he summons or whatever? So we're like, okay, so we'll have that layer. And then there are other ones which to me are almost I've referred to them before as like pillar characters or whatever, but it's almost, I would consider them like almost like ethereal-ish type gods, right? So like the goddess of the moon might appear to you as like a white stag
Mhm.
and guide you. So that level of creature is something, to me, it's a tool for the DM where they could kind of interact with players. But that type of god or whatever doesn't have like 80 hit points and does 2d8 damage. They're actually a more of a story piece, that like appears to the players or guides them in a certain way, or
Okay.
that type of thing. So I guess to me that was an interesting part to play with. It's a tool for a DM, but it's also in another category of like, I stabbed Odin. It's like, I don't know if I don't know if that's, if you want to play a game like that, cool. But most times it's in the stories, Odin might appear, give you a sign and then fade away, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yep. So we're like, okay, that's a different tool than Odin is a sack of 120 hit points, right? So yeah,
Yep.
that's sort of how we're handling some of that stuff. If that answers your question, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the other big questions I think is alignment or no alignment, and what kind of alignment?
That one we haven't even decided on yet. Because I'm not sure if we even can put in like the classic D&D alignment. I would love to, and just say you could use this. I have to check into it a little bit.
I
I
mean,
think you probably can. Like I
yeah,
think
because I don't think you can copyright that aspect of it.
yeah, you can't own evil, can you? Yeah.
Hasbro may have tried, but
Oh,
no,
yeah.
supposedly no. Um,
Okay. Yeah, but we
uh,
had some other little. That's where you get into like the little game widgets.
yeah.
Like we had a little system where, um, we have it. We have a little notes on it written up, and we're like, we're not sure if we'll put this in or not. But it was basically you play a game, and then at the end of that game, all the players can vote for like the best and worst person, best and worst, character,
Mhm.
or they could vote either best or worst or something. So your character would have this little scale that kind of starts out somewhere in the middle, and your own friends would kind of be like, your character's kind of a jerk, and it's like, oh, you're going a little more evil, right? He's a jerk again, you're going a little more evil. So we thought it might be fun to actually have sort of a democratic judgment of everyone on your
Yeah, yeah,
characters.
yeah.
That would be fun. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, I used to ignore alignment, but now I
Mhm.
find it really helpful because if you don't, players will just do whatever's the most convenient at the time, which means they're all evil all the time.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but that's interesting. I like that idea of the other players vote if you're a jerk or not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Your
it should have
character. Hopefully they're not voting
your
that you're a jerk, but your character.
and then it should have in-game effects too. Like if the other players vote that your character's a jerk, like every time you go into the tavern, like your cup only gets filled halfway or something.
Yep. And it might give you bonuses in other ways where it's like the Thieves Guild is kind of like, yeah, I've heard you're a bit of a cutthroat. I can trust a guy who's out for money, right? Like,
yeah.
So it's a bit of a reputation, I guess, kind of thing. And that's another thing that features in the stories, is your reputation, Like, are you a hero or are people like, oh, it's that guy?
So two, I was wondering, you had mentioned you sort of have an alternative for the gold for XP type stuff. And I'm just wondering, do you recommend, or maybe it's a widget, I don't know, like XP for activity, like how would I say it? Yeah, XP for activities that don't include murdering people. Like for example, if you're a thief rogue, would you get XP for like popping open chests or figuring out that the door actually isn't trapped and all you have to do is pull the lever?
We don't get that exactly specific. Because that, I think what you're describing there would be getting into like specific action based XP. Like
kind of.
I picked a lock, or I made a good hit, or that kind of thing. So I can tell you one thing that we like a Gordian knot that we couldn't quite solve. So if you look at the characters, you know that your fighter is going to be attacking a lot. You know that your rogue is going to be attacking a lot, but also using probably a lot more of the skills. And you know your mage is going to be casting a lot of spells. So all of those things are D20 rolls, right? So we toyed with the idea of basically making your advancement connected to rolling a natural 20, right? And we kind of went down that road for a little bit and worked out the system, which is getting more to what you said. Like, do I get XP for like picking a lock or something? It's like, could you make sort of, I guess you'd call it like a naturalistic growth of your character? And we tried that. We found a bunch of real pitfalls and problems with it. It was hard to get it to work right.
Okay.
But our system we have now is it's basically, there are kind of these categories, what are they, like fighting and exploration and just achieving a goal or things like that. They're pretty broad. Okay. And the way we do it is that's sort of the mission or the game that you played, and you get D6s. You might get, oh, that was a tough fight, so you get 3 D6 for that. We explored a new area, you get a couple D6 for that. So let's say the whole group gets 10 D6, they roll them, they'll probably get something like 35, and then you times that by 10, 350, and it's going to take you 1,000 XP per level to go up. So there is room for that too, of like, you picked a lock really well, you can have an extra D6, right? And players, so we try to make it so you can customize it. If somebody did something really well, you can throw them an extra D6 or 2, and you kind of go up, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and then we don't really have gold for XP, but we do have XP kind of ups the limit on your Ruttigers Guild credit card.
Nice.
Right? So that allows you, you have to be in a place where the guild can, we were talking about, it's kind of based off, I don't know if you know the Knights Templar, and they had a banking system, right? And they would make you a writ. you know. So
Yeah.
like the Ruttigers Guild is like the Knights Templar. You can get a writ from them. You're acknowledged by the guild, so therefore you can kind of take out coin against your your reputation in a way.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, did that
Yeah.
answer your? Oh, and we'll have a couple of options there too. Um, some folks like Milestone, right?
Yeah.
Um, we'll probably work out a system using the existing chart to do gold for XP. Because like I said, to me, it's like if you're setting your game,
Hmm.
uh, we want to have the main, like, here's how we do it, nice and clear. But then, like, here's some options if you want to use them, uh, which we think is kind of fun because that allows you to turn that dial on your game and be like, let's go Dark Souls or whatever, right?
Yeah. I mean, I personally just think that's in modern gaming, that's the way to go. Where, if you can understand how changing the rules will affect the outcome of the game,
Yep.
then it's easy to play the game that you and your players want, in my opinion, without
Yeah.
having to resort to, okay, let me try this new homebrew or that new homebrew. It's like, the answer's probably already there.
That's where we kind of go back to the beginning of what we're talking about and what we're going for. Um, like if I took a game like Call of Cthulhu, it is
Hmm.
specifically designed to play a particular type of game. The the players are not powerful. They're kind of low hit
Yep.
points. It's a very simple skill system. There's a sanity system. It's very specific, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, so we wanted that thing where it's like, oh yeah, when back in the day when we first started playing D&D, we would tweak things, make our own rules. I don't think Monty Hall was ever an official thing to do, but people were like, that'd be fun, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so we're kind of like, oh, can we echo that a bit? But we did realize we need a functional, solid core, and this is our game at its core and how we want it to play. And then we want to make sure if there's options to say experience or something, that they're clear, but they're sort of like over here, right? So if you want to tweak your game, you could do this, and here's how it's going to affect the game. So that was a really head scratcher, but it also we were like, if somebody's playing Shadow Dark and they really like Shadow Dark, or they're playing like Moldvay Basic, or they're playing like Castles and Crusades, that there would still be a lot of stuff in our game that you could apply to any of those games and be like, this is a fun thing that we can use. Because like I said, I wanted it to be, this is the book that we wanted, right? So it's like, and then we're like, then we want all the stuff in it. And it was like, okay, then we have to find a way to organize it. So that's pretty much what that's why it took a long time from me saying, we're making a game, to here's the playtest.
Yeah. So Ruttigers, is
Mhm.
everything going to be in one volume, or are you going to go the traditional player's guide, monster manual, DMG?
We want it all in one.
Nice.
And I should have mentioned that up front too. The books that were kind of based on one of the first ones is Rule Cyclopedia. So it's not in terms of like the game design necessarily, but in terms of the content that was in it.
Mhm.
So Rule Cyclopedia had character creation, classes, spells, monsters, a setting. It had mass combat rules. It weapon specialization. It was like this one book that had everything in it. And then the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide was also another book that just had a bunch of like tools and toys and ideas that you could use. So we're like, our ideal book would be those two put together. So it's just one volume. But when we look at things like obviously we could take our setting, and that could be like 300-page books to give you all kinds of details. So that's where we're kind of like, this is a Ruttigers Almanac. If people really liked it and they wanted more stuff, then we'd probably do Ruttigers Almanac 2. But that would probably just add more. But what we really wanted was, if you have this book, from top to bottom, it just gives you everything that you need. I never wanted a separate monster book and a separate, book spells and a separate book. It's like, I like a game where you just, here it all is,
Yeah. And so, mentioning campaign books, I assume those would be coming for you. Can you ever see yourselves doing sort of like Shadow Dark, where other people can write material for your game?
Yeah, absolutely. I would. That, to me, that's the part that we really like. When we sat at the playtest, we immediately had a few people, and I was surprised at how quickly. This was within a few days. People have written adventures, right? And that made me like so excited. I was, so we will have to work out exactly like, because I've talked to my friends about this. I'm like, if we have sort of an open gaming license, we want it very open. So it'll be kind of like, yeah, put our, mark or whatever on it. But besides that, knock yourself out. And probably the only part that we would be like, we want to keep to make sure that it's sort of under our wing is, and I think most gamers could identify with this, some of the NPCs or NPC characters or things like that in the worlds and sort of the world, like this world, the city is named Rorangad and things like that. We'd want to make sure that we kind of kept the ownership of that, essentially, because those are characters of like me and my friends and stuff. So we're like, okay, those, but we would love to have it just as open as possible for people to, which would still be, they could use those characters, but it would be like, yeah, but those guys, my friend Clark owns that guy, right? So used with permission, right? Yeah, so that part we would love to be as open as possible. And we have, I think, a cool idea too for what we would do. You're talking like kind of campaigns. We have 2 or 3 additional campaign type of setting change things that we would love to do. But that's only if this one,
if it takes off.
If this one does well, yeah. Yep.
Well, I think it has a good chance. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I haven't had a chance to play test it myself, but it does seem, if you've played 5th edition or Shadow Dark or really any version of D&D, you should be able to get what you're putting down pretty easily. And I think too, if you have newbies who've never played anything, it doesn't seem that complicated. It's not like 3.5 where you need calculus. It doesn't use math to figure out how you hit 0, or it doesn't look like you need that many tables to figure everything out. So I like that someone could really, maybe within a half an hour, go from nothing to having a character and sort of understanding the basic mechanics of how the game works.
Yep. Yeah, and that was sort of I talked on another stream of like part of the way we thought about this. When I was talking to a friend one day, he was playing an online golf game with another friend of ours. The default setting for the golf game was sort of medium. So it's like wind meant something, quality of your club meant something, difficulty of the weight of the stroke and all this, right? Or touchiness of it, so that was sort of medium. And they got a little frustrated because that was a lot of fiddliness. So they both dial it down to the simplest version of the game. And then slowly added in like, let's add in the wind resistance rules. Let's add in this. So it was a digital game, but they would, you basically turn difficulty knobs up and down. By the end of a little bit, I don't know, it might have been a week or two or something, they were having a tournament against each other with all of the rules, right? Highest difficulty, right? And playing against each other. So I thought that's kind of the thing. A lot of times it's like, a game is either, very crunchy or very simple. And I was like, yeah, we want to have it where it's like, it's very simple to get into, and then you can add layers as you like. And that's our big goal for it, I would say. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
We are at the 10:30 mark, and I will turn into a pumpkin if I stay up too late. So if
It's
people are,
always great talking to you, though, man. You're awesome.
yes, oh, thank you. So if people want to follow Ruttigers Almanac, if they want to play test it or just want to keep an eye for whenever the Kickstarter is coming, where would they go?
You can find me on Twitter. I think it's Witters Richard, but if you just search Richard Witters or whatever, look for the blue Zvart who's balding. Then you can find me on Twitter. That's probably where I put most of the sort of updates out. And Instagram, just Richard Witters on Instagram. There's my drawings, and I usually put updates there too. And both of those are sort of our blog, which I know is like, that's like having a MySpace, but but I have a blog that we've been keeping to. That'll probably get more active over the next little while, so you can always hit the blog. Yep. So that's where you get it.
And it seemed to be the cool thing that all the kids are doing. Are you guys planning on opening a Discord for Ruttigers, or?
Yeah. Yep. Pretty soon, we want to get out the V2, which is basically the version 2 of the playtest, which is sort of like tightening a few things, and also show folks like, hey, they gave suggestions. It's like we're gonna try to put those in here and see what we can do.
Nice.
And I would like to coincide that. Hopefully, that's early next week or something. And I'd hope to coincide that with our Discord kind of opening up, because we have put the Discord together. We just haven't really publicly opened the doors.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much set up. We just haven't unlocked the front doors yet, but we'd like to do that because I would like to go on there and run games. Is what I would like to do.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Like, it seems like what most of these games that are online, like what they really need is like a central place where people who are interested in playing this sort of thing can go and find the game until it, becomes big enough and it spills out onto like Roll20 or Foundry or, some other larger site.
Yep. Yeah.
Plus, it's cool, if you can dip in to like somebody's stream and just like fly on a wall, watch other people playing.
If there's like a 24/7 pool of people who I can just go like, who wants to play? I mean, that's like a dream to me. I would do that.
Yeah.
I ran a game on stream, Patty's stream, a little while ago. I must admit, it was a little weird for me. I'm not used to running. I'm used to mostly running like in person, or maybe a video with my friends. So I was a little bit messed up. That, but no, I would love that. I would love to just go on and DM for people, and that would be so fun. And the rest of it too. We have all the other stuff, but I would love grab people in DM. That would be awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, so everyone, go check out Richard's Twitter, x.com @WittersRichard. You can find him there. You'll get updates for Ruttigers, and I assume you're going to promote the Discord whenever you're ready. So maybe by the end of the year, early next year, everyone can get on in and find some people who want to play some Ruttiger adventures.
Yeah.
All right. So everyone, I'll be back next Tuesday with Fabrizio Aiello, the most Italian sounding man you've ever heard of from Pittsburgh, and his comic, Horace H. Hoover.